Hi, my name is Nia Bengtzen, and in some online spaces, I am also known as Arlen Blue. I'm a new media major who specializes in animation and storyboarding, and I also work a lot with physical media, and I try to find ways to incorporate my sculptures with my digital work. So, what exactly is my creative process, and how do I go about working on my projects? So, as I stated earlier, I am a new media artist who also likes to incorporate various physical mediums with my digital ones. I prefer to make art focused on different forms of entertainment, mainly comedy and horror, two of my favorite genres. Now, how do I begin my process? I start by looking for inspiration for an idea. This could come in many forms and tends to differ from project to project. One of my biggest modes of inspiration comes from experimentation. I love to try new techniques and processes, and I am constantly looking for new avenues of experimentation. My most recent endeavor has been trying my hand at puppetry, which has led to some interesting results that I will discuss and show soon. I also like to dive into interesting historical events and myths and legends from around the world. I tend to pull from these events and stories, finding aspects of them to focus on within my work, mainly my animations. Finally, I use my love for all things horror related to lead my projects to creepier and sometimes scarier avenues. With these pieces of inspiration, how do I implement these ideas? I begin this process by asking myself a few questions. What mediums am I using? Am I working with physical or digital mediums? What techniques am I using, and are they a new technique I've never tried before? This leads me to plan out how much prep, if any, I need to do before working on the actual project. If this is a physical medium, what kind of materials do I need? That way I can plan how much I might need to spend, or if I have most of the materials on hand. Adding to this, what kind of tools do I need? Do I have the tools, or do I need to go out and find them? This could be something as simple as an X-Acto knife, or something as big as a bandsaw. Now, I'm going to show 3 of my projects and explain my process for how they came about. First up is a proof of concept trailer for a video game titled A Doctor's Plight. For this prompt, I had to design an idea for a game relating to any historical event. I was drawn to the events of the 14th century, specifically the Papal Schism that divided the members of the Roman Catholic Church, as well as the bubonic plague that ravaged the European people. I designed an RPG game where you play as a plague doctor serving under the church as you search for a cure behind the abominations seemingly created by the plague spreading throughout the country. I knew I wanted to try my hand at pixel art, something I had little experience with. I experimented with different colors, eventually limiting myself to 3 colors: green, white, and black. I also practiced how to animate with pixel art since the process is fairly different from my usual way of animating. I created several cutscenes to compile together to create a macabre and melancholic atmosphere. The second project I have here involves my recent dive into puppetry. Penelope Love is a project I am continuously adding to as I learn how to make and puppeteer marionettes. I started by researching ways to make marionettes. I created a wooden body and decided I wanted to lean more into a comedic and brightly colored design, so I gave her 2 faces and large oversized hands and used some brightly colored fabric I already had. Much of her final design is inspired by supplies I already had on hand or had access to. This added to the more homemade feel I wanted to go for originally. As I continue, I look to refine the project more and have even begun to design advertisements for Penelope, as seen here in the middle. The final project is my most recent creation. I was inspired by Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets. I wanted to create a show where 2 puppets heckle the other art in the area. While much of this was inspired by my desire to experiment with puppets, I also wanted to experiment with electronics, and I worked with Arduino kits to create the automated puppets for the show. This way I wouldn't have to move the puppets by hand. These are just a few projects I have created with a variety of different approaches I work with. I hope this was insightful to my personal creative process.